Hey, it's Don, the auction professor here today. I wanted to address a question that's been brought up to me more times than any other question for the last couple months. It's referring to the variations options on eBay. Now, in the past, the variations options meant that you could list, say, the exact same shirt in just different colors and different sizes. It gave you multiple options you could do, but again, it had to be the exact same basic item. That has always been the case. The only exceptions are a few things such as some sports teams and things like that, where the shirt could be the same, but the design and logo would be different for each individual team. Now, in the past as well, things like a Nike and a Reebok shoe could not be sold in the same listing, which should technically still be the aspect of it. Because again, they're different brands, so you can't do things like that. But what keeps turning up constantly now, and especially since eBay has changed the set policy, the wording anyway, I should say, there's some major confusion on what is and isn't allowed. Now, I've been looking into this same issue for a couple of years now, because if I'm able to list items that are similar in a variations listing, it'll save me a lot of money. I've got, for instance, there's a label category where you can list labels as a variation. With each variation, you could have 250 items in that one listing. So in essence, I literally have over 2,000 labels up on eBay right this minute. I could technically condense those into about 8 listings if you're allowed to do it that way. Now, I've been looking at some very specific listings. I've also had people email me, message me, text me. I've even had people in some of my groups, such as my Patreon group, send me stuff, as well as my Facebook group, about specific listings that they were told was okay by eBay. Now, I stopped giving out any advice whatsoever on variation listings after seeing the new setup on here. I wanted to look into this, so I literally didn't want to quote anything if it wasn't correct. I made many calls to eBay, as well as 2 other people who brought some of these issues up to me. One of the listings is for vintage action figures, and it shows many different types of action figures in one listing, and they're all variations. This listing is for 80s action figures, and it lists many different 80s action figures from the same toy line, mind you. Let's just say He-Man, for example, and it lists many different characters, all in a variations listing. Now, that in the past was never allowed. And the other listing that had a variation was for labels. It had vintage 1930s and 40s paper labels of all different types from different locations, different companies, and different everything, all in the same listing as a variation. Now, that specific one has been up for at least 8 months, because I personally called about it maybe 8 months ago, maybe even 9 months ago, to see if that's a new policy that I could do and use myself. I was told it wasn't then. Now, fast forward to today, me and 2 other people that I've been in this conversation with over the variations all made multiple calls to eBay over a 30-day time frame. Now, the 3 of us are all in different time zones. We have different levels of store also. But we called on those same 2 specific listings. Again, I originally wanted to put those listings in here, but I would hate for somebody to get bombarded with questions or comments or anything like that. The policy technically says you can get booted off for doing something that violates this rule. So I don't want to post any listings up here. Now, with those 12 calls that we placed, the 3 of us, we all asked about those exact same 2 listings. The biggest complaint I have is no consistency with those that you talk to at eBay. And I don't blame anybody at Help Desk. They only can use the information that they have. So they're confined by that aspect. They were all nice. They were all polite. No one did anything that was inappropriate in anybody's eyes whatsoever. But the information was just so all over the place. 7 of those calls said at least one of those listings could be done. The other 5 all pretty much said that no, they couldn't. So the majority of the calls, the answers that we got, said that you can do that as a variation. Now, I personally talked to one person who had been with eBay for 3 years and had no clue on what the policy was. He looked at it and then quoted something that was way off bounds on what you would allow on a variations listing. He said they both should be allowed. I questioned him on that. They actually called or text, I guess, the variations department, which is a department you or I could never talk to. So everything we get is secondhand knowledge. I expressed what I was trying to get and that the information was needed by many people. I couldn't get a straight answer. I was told that one of the listings, the action figure listing, wasn't allowed only because it had different prices in the listing. But that's not really a good answer, because even in the policy, the new current policy for variations, it says they can have different prices. So, the answers I got were just all over the place, wrong in so many ways, even against the own policy that eBay posted on the site. Now, if you look at the new variations policy, it's very vague. It used to be very specific and mention many different examples. Now it's vague, and it can be construed in any basic way that eBay wants it to. They've also added more items in that you can run variations on. Again, one of them is labels. So I would like to use that to save from listing thousands of possible listings. I could condense many into a specific variation for a label if that was the case. So it is a big money issue if you're saving thousands of listings a year. So again, it's not just some little minor thing. It's something that could get you kicked off the site. The answer after all these phone calls is that I have no earthly clue whatsoever what eBay's variation policy is. Neither does the majority of those people working at eBay. So I am totally lost. I have no earthly clue on what the variation policy is anymore at all. I know what it used to be, but if you call and do the same thing, you're going to find that no one there seems to know the specific policy. They're going to sit there and read it as well and tell you probably that things that in the past, just months ago, would have been a no-no to do and would have got you in trouble. By listing things in variations that aren't variations, like the action figures that we're talking about, or the labels that we're talking about, that's technically avoiding eBay fees because each one in the past should have been their own separate listing. So that's why I have not done it, even though many of the calls that I got said, go ahead and do it. It is perfectly fine. Even after the help desk clarification, then talking to somebody else, their answer still didn't sync with the entire history of eBay's variation policy. So what is the variation policy? I haven't an earthly clue, but I honestly would love to know. I can't imagine that the policy would allow you to list different action figures and different labels that had nothing to do with each other other than, say, a brand. It just makes no sense because in the past, that has always been a avoidance of fee issue, which can get you kicked off of eBay. So for me, it's a major issue. It's a money-saving issue. I can't imagine them allowing this to go on. But again, they haven't policed these at all whatsoever. Even when you talk to them about them, it's not a reported issue. You would have to go and report it. I haven't done it again because most of these people were probably told by eBay that it is allowed, depending on who they talk to, what day of the week, what person they referred the questions to, and such forth. So now me and several other folks also looked into many other policies on eBay, and almost every one I looked at was so vague it wasn't explanatory into a specific, which leaves it up in the air on what they would do if something is reported or does become an issue. So again, be cautious out there. I don't know the policy. eBay obviously doesn't know the policy when 7 out of 12 people tell me that some of these variations are allowed. The other 5 calls say no, that they weren't. So I have no clue. The majority of people at eBay think that those type of listings are okay. You know, if you've had similar issues or have done variations and had issues like this, why don't you leave a comment down below and maybe we can look into that as well. This is very frustrating. All I want is clarification, and I can't get that with 12 different phone calls to eBay over the exact same 2 listings. But this is just one of those frustrations with eBay. We know there's all these other glitches going on, and to not have clarification on an issue that's, again, tying back to us being able to save some money is very frustrating. But that's what I have for you today. Hopefully that gave you some thoughts, some ideas. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified if I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell a friend.